Weapons have existed as long as humankind. For millennia, they have determined the destiny of generations. Weapons bring suffering and death. They show what humans can inflict upon other humans. But they're also intended to keep the peace and pave new ways for technology. Since humans began fighting against one another, speed has been the deciding factor between life and death. With complex experiments, we want to determine how this affected the development of weapons technology and changed the course of history. The revolver has a rotating cylinder to increase firing speed.
I'll gladly take 6 shots, 5 shots, 4 shots over someone who only has 1.
The Sling projectiles can be almost as dangerous as modern firearms.
Whether you're wearing armor or not, if it hits you in the head, it's certainly going to kill you.
With the revolutionary Chariot, death by bow and arrow can happen at lightning speed.
A game-changing weapon. It brought mobility to the battlefield.
Our first weapon, the Chariot, designed to bring warriors quickly to the enemy while at the same time protecting them from attacks with its speed. In the 17th century BC on the Nile Delta, the hooves of thousands of horses shake the ground as the Hyksos people attack with their chariots. For the Egyptians, the vehicle is a completely new weapon system, and it takes quite a bit of practice to master.
The skill sets required on board involved archery, javelin work, and doing all of this from a relatively fast-moving and awkward platform. So this is a skill set involving keeping your balance, using weapons in a new and difficult environment.
The Hyksos come from the Near East, bringing the technology of the chariot with them. It mobilizes their warriors to give them a decisive advantage over the Pharaoh's army. For the first time in its 1,500-year history, Egypt is occupied by foreign rule. The Hyksos continue their rule of the country for another century. Weapons expert Mike Loades wants to reveal the secret to the Chariot's success. How is it constructed? And what makes it effective on the battlefield?
The primary function is for the archer. So he has a driver, but the main warrior is the archer. All of this, the horses, the wheels, the chariot, all it's for is to put an archer on the battlefield.
A weapons system faster and more mobile than ever seen before in the ancient world. Made of light wood and leather. It was most commonly used by warriors with bows and arrows, but spearmen and axe fighters also used chariots.
When chariots first came thundering onto the ancient battlefield, warfare changed. Now, for the first time, squadrons of chariots could come streaming in for surprise attack. Chariots could control the battlefield. They could frustrate enemy troop movements. They could respond instantly to changing situations. They had mobility. This was a new tactic in the general's toolkit. And with it came a new type of warrior, the cavalryman. He was elite, he was expensive, and above all else, he was heroic.
This technological revolution in warfare would have never been possible without one of mankind's greatest inventions, the wheel. The first known wheel dates back to more than 5,000 years ago. It was discovered in Slovenia in 2002. Made of ash and oak wood, this disc wheel and its wagon were most likely used for agriculture. An artifact from Poland shows the oldest depiction of a wheel. The Brno-Chica vase dates back to around 3,500 BC.
Das Rad ist für die Menschheit natürlich wahnsinnig.
The wheel is unbelievably important for mankind. At first, it wasn't really designed for speed. Large solid wood disc wheels just wouldn't give you too much speed. But you could use them to efficiently transport loads with a cart, using, for example, a team of oxen. And that was absolutely a relief in workload for the Neolithic population.
The first evidence pointing to the use of wheels in war can be found on the Ur standard, which dates back to 3000 BC. The wooden box, which comes from a royal tomb in present-day Iraq, shows pictures of peace on one side and pictures of war on the other. On the chariot, disc wheels are recognizable, most likely a representation of a Sumerian military victory.
The original Sumerian chariots are essentially four-wheel carts. They're powered by asses. These are not fast vehicles. They're not dynamic. They're just mobile platforms from which men can fight. Spears, maybe bows and arrows. They're not fast. They don't change the pace of battle. They probably enable men to arrive at battle fresher than they would have done if they'd marched there or run there. So they have some advantages, but they're not fundamentally transformational weapons.
Another invention is necessary: spokes. Initially, wheels are equipped with 4 spokes, which doesn't exactly make them stable.
And then a big innovation was to just use more spokes so that you could distribute the load better and you could put more weight onto the axle.
A 4-spoked wheel is light enough to be used on the battlefield, but with a heavy load, it can quickly break. The first solution, twice as many spokes, but this also increases weight at the expense of speed. The brilliant compromise, 6 spokes, providing optimal stability and maneuverability. While still under the Hyksos occupation, the Egyptians begin improving their chariot technology. They experiment with different materials and designs until they find the most efficient solution.
What the Egyptians did was they got pieces of timber like this, so that each spoke is actually 2 pieces. But the bend goes into the next spoke. So this is that spoke, and it comes onto this one here. So this joint is now incredibly strong because it was grown. They would take young trees and at a young age bend them over. Here is the joint. That is now as strong as you can get it, and it's quick to assemble.
In the 1920s, in the Valley of the Kings, scientists make a spectacular discovery. Tutankhamun's tomb reveals, among other things, 6 perfectly preserved chariots. Even after the end of foreign rule, the Egyptians continued to use Hyksos technology. No one knows whether the chariot played a role in shifting the balance of power. In a workshop, restorers have spent several weeks building an Egyptian chariot for us, based on the highly sophisticated royal carriage of Tutankhamun.
Designing these chariots really was a science in its own right. People spent 200 or more years developing the technology. They understood that it depended on the material. I couldn't use wood that was too heavy, or else I wouldn't be able to transport it very well. And I potentially needed individual parts that I was able to replace, which made the entire vehicle more flexible. And in doing so, I'd have the advantage in combat.
With individual parts, it comes down to what weighs the least and what is the most useful for battle.
Auch das Thema Federung war den Leuten schon bewusst.
They also considered the issue of suspension so that the shooter could remain as stable as possible, and if you drove over a hole, you wouldn't miss completely. So they came up with strategies like a leather platform for the archer to stand on. They really thought a lot about the individual parts, which is fascinating technological work.
A woven leather platform for a chariot needs to be extremely sturdy in order to carry a crew of up to 3 men. On the other hand, it needs to be flexible enough to cushion them from any impact from the ground along the way. The finished chariot, built from natural materials according to historical models. Leather straps hold the wooden poles together from the yoke in front of the horses all the way to the axle at the rear of the carriage.
You can see the axle runs at the rear of the platform. So all the weight is on the wheels, it's not on the horses. And these wheels are independent. They are on a fixed axle, and the wheels move independently on the axle.
The Battle of Kadesh, 1274 BC. The Egyptians battle against the Hittites, their new rivals for domination of the Near East. Both sides have the same weapons at their disposal. According to ancient sources, over 5,000 chariots face off as the two great powers of antiquity clash on the battlefield.
The Egyptians and the Hittites were involved in a very serious arms race with the new chariot technology. And the chariots are used to engage the enemy and engage each other. And essentially it's a battle about chariots, and that's certainly how the Egyptians represent their version in which they win, and the Hittites had a version in which, of course, they won as well. It's one of history's greatest drawn battles.
The Hittites' chariots are heavier and less agile than the Egyptians, which is also a result of their larger three-man crews, and thus the Egyptians win at least the race for speed. We want to put the Egyptian chariot to the test on a race course to take a look at its driving performance. Today, one factor plays a crucial role, as it did long ago: the horses.
Men drove chariots for about 1,000 years before they rode horses. And that's because early horses were really quite small. They weren't big enough and strong enough to carry a man's weight. But you could pull a man by putting him in a wheeled vehicle.
Our well-trained racehorses are 1.6 meters tall. Egyptian horses were about 30 centimeters smaller. But they had a special trick.
You'll see they've got this neck fork here. This is quite different to modern harness. The horses are just attached, just by the withers there. Only one attachment with a yoke joining them. So with this system, it's much more challenging to drive them and to keep them straight. It takes a lot more driving expertise. But on the battlefield, it was more efficient. If one of your horses got shot, then you could change the team very quickly, like a Formula One pit crew. Men would rush in, 1-2 straps, you can take the team out and get another team in really quickly.
How fast can this kind of chariot go on a flat surface? The first test for our replica is a distance of 50 meters.
So what time did we get?
6.50.
That's not bad. 6 seconds, 50 meters. That's it. That's it. 12 seconds for 100 meters.
With two horses, Mike Loads manages a speed of 30 kilometers per hour. An impressive speed for ancient times. But it wasn't possible everywhere.
Man muss sich das so vorstellen, dass natürlich so ein Streitwagen...
You have to imagine that in ancient times, of course, they needed to plan a chariot operation, and that meant their choice battlefield depended on where they could most effectively use their chariots. We know that the Egyptians specifically sent out cleanup crews to collect stones so that nothing would trip up the vehicles, and then they could drive right up to the enemy and take full advantage of their speed and efficiency.
The most important requirement to have the swiftest chariot, after the spoke wheel, domesticated horses. They are animals with stamina, agile, fast, and they can be trained, ideal for warfare.
The horse is the single most important animal of war. It's carried men to war, it's carried men in battle, and it's carried them out of battle again. It's critical to the logistics of war, to the moving of heavy equipment, artillery, for example. Horses are a creature that has been selectively bred over thousands of years to serve man's military needs.
The importance of horse breeding more than 3,000 years ago is demonstrated by a document known as the Kekuli text, written by Hittite in the 14th century BC.
Wenn man sich die Kikuli-Texte anschaut,
When you look at the Kikuli text, if you know anything about horses, you notice immediately that a team is trained to optimal performance as fast as possible. There are different training sessions. There are instructions about feeding, only oats, then only alfalfa. And then they were taken on night rides, which was probably also so that enemy spies couldn't figure out when you had your chariot teams ready to run, when they're ready for action. That needed to be kept secret for as long as possible.
A lot of effort is needed to get the best out of the horses. But the archer also needs a chariot driver that he can rely on. For our second test, we bring in backup.
So now I have a driver and I am the archer. This was the main two-man crew in battle. You had the driver and the warrior who was the archer. What we see on the Egyptian chariots is on both sides crossed quivers. So the presumption is that I can shoot here and turn around and use these arrows to shoot on that side and change, and that I can get over and shoot using these arrows on this side and turn and use those. That I should be able to shoot from all four corners of the chariot, because in a battle, especially chariot to chariot battle, you don't know where the chariot is coming out of the dust cloud, so you need to be able to move around.
How well can Mike Loads aim at full speed? From a narrow chariot, archers need to be able to shoot in all directions. The chariot suspension should make sure that Mike can keep his balance. Nine out of 12 shots hit their target.
So I had a few misses, but you know, if you were in battle, for everyone you missed, there's a man standing behind, so it would have hit somebody in dense ranks of men. It's fine to shoot from this platform. If you imagine thousands of chariots on the battlefield, which there were, then the dust clouds, you wouldn't be able to see where they were. They're moving and you can't see where they are. That's fast enough not to be shot back at. So I think, for its time, it was a really useful weapon and a game-changing weapon. It brought mobility to the battlefield.
But there are also drawbacks. A highly trained chariot unit is extremely expensive and can only be used on the plains and not in the forest or the mountains. As the horse gains popularity, cavalrymen replace the chariot. Our next weapon. For centuries, it decides the victors of ancient battles. And yet today, it is associated almost exclusively with a story from the Bible, the sling. 2,000 years ago, in Greek, Roman, and other armies, slingers are in high demand. Yet only a few pieces of evidence has been handed down about this simple range weapon. Dating back to the 2nd century AD, this relief on Trajan's column depicts Iberians using slings, an indication of their great importance during the era of the Roman Empire.
In ancient battles, the use of the sling was quite common, and the sling was used in much the same way as muskets and rifles in early 18th century, 19th century warfare.
Our expert, Mike Loads, is headed to Denmark. In a historic village, he wants to discover the secret of this almost forgotten ancient superweapon.
The sling is possibly the earliest weapon that gave man mechanical advantage. What it did was it extended the length of his arm. It made them longer levers, so you could throw with more speed and more force.
During the Stone Age, slings are used for hunting, and later their specific snapping sound can be heard on the battlefield. An ancient sling is between 60 to 100 centimeters long and made up of braided plant fibers. Its projectiles weigh between 30 to 250 grams. These stones, located in modern-day Turkey, are some of the earliest evidence of the sling. They date back to around 8,500 years ago.
In expert hands, the sling's a really powerful weapon. It was a breaker of heads and a smasher of bones. And the best slingers came from the Balearic Isles. They were sought after by all the ancient armies, the Greeks, the Romans, the Carthaginians. Legend has it that the mothers of children in the Balearic Isles would not let them eat, would not give them their food until they could hit it with a sling. There is such a cultural tradition there, and it lasts today. Even today, the best slingers come from the Balearics.
Talented slingers are celebrated stars in the Balearic Islands. On Mallorca, in Sao Paulo, the Slinging World Championship takes place every year. Not surprisingly, the best slinger in the world is also from the Balearic Islands. Luis Pons Livermore is a multiple-time champion and will support us with our experiments.
You have different parts, the ring where you put the finger, the pouch where you put the stone or whatever, and the final it is the tail that have two functions. One is the crack, make a noise.
Like a whiplash?
Yeah, like a whip. And the other one, for get precision.
But if this snaps like a whip, that means this is going incredibly fast. I mean, this is a high-speed weapon, isn't it? I mean, you can throw a rock, but when you throw it with this, then it becomes a bullet.
An important factor for speed is known as the band. The longer it is, the faster the projectile will launch. The part in the middle is known as the pouch.
You're making the divide here, which is this part of the sling, which is critical.
Yeah. Let's have these two parts exactly the same.
The world champion slinger knows exactly how to make the weapon himself. The plant fibers are extremely resistant to tearing.
How old were you when you made your first sling?
Probably 10 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Begin, 10, 11.
You would never throw with someone else's sling. There's a pride in making your own sling.
No, all the slings are different.
With practice movements, Luis finishes his sling in less than 30 minutes.
That's fantastic. That was so quick. It seems so easy, but it's elaborate.
During ancient wars, slingers are used in a variety of ways. In Caesar's time, a typical Roman battle formation is made up of heavily armed legionnaires arranged into blocks on the battlefield. Each block, known as a cohort, consists of close to 500 soldiers. Those with slings are placed in between the individual blocks, as well as in the front rows.
And once the battle starts, you could have the elite slingers, like the Balearic slingers, you could have them in the front line, men who can aim accurately, men who could target a general on a horse at 300 meters. But you could also use regular slingers behind ranks of archers, because the sling has got a greater range than the bow and arrow. And these men would be throwing high in the air, bringing down a tempest of stones falling on the heads of the enemy.
In addition to the Balearic snipers, less well-trained men with slings also play a key role. But how difficult is it to master the weapon? We want to find out in an experiment with 3 amateurs. For safety reasons, tennis balls will be used instead of stones.
The ring goes in the middle finger. You put it like this, and it's hanging out of your hand, okay? You pick the tail, and you close it in your hand like this, okay, soft. And you see the pouch, you have to be the same level, all right? When you have this, you have to put the tennis ball just on top. Once you get the body position and you have the sling in your hand, you spin it 3-4 times. You have to pull your arm, and when you pull your arm, you have to get close the tail. So having a sling is like having a long arm. For example, if you're going to pass the ball like this and it's going to go out, it's the same. You have to get the movement to pull it front and open your hand forward.
Their target, a tin can 10 meters away. Who scores on their first try? For world champion Luis, it's a piece of cake.
No pressure.
No pressure.
The amateurs have a hard time with their slings. Accurate shots are a rare exception.
It's harder than I thought, because my balls were all over the place. So, I don't know. In 10 years, I might be as good as him.
Even in ancient times, years of training are what distinguishes the snipers from just another soldier with a sling.
There's a lot of debate around how long it takes to become an expert in something, and there's figures around from 20 hours up until 10,000 hours. But what we do know simply is that the more you practice something, the better you become at it, even if you're not naturally good at something.
A sling is simple to make and can be mastered through training, making it the weapon of ordinary people. A message that can also be found in the Old Testament. In the famous story of David and Goliath, a small Israeli boy faces a massive Philistine warrior. The young shepherd reaches into his satchel, takes out a stone, and slings it to hit the giant in the forehead.
This tells us everything about the sling. It's a leveling weapon. It allows somebody who is not of elite status, doesn't have all the elite equipment of armor, sword and horse, to do something really significant on the battlefield.
Even today, the sling can still be highly symbolic, such as when Palestinians stand up to Israeli soldiers with slings. David versus Goliath, an age-old tradition of the Holy Land.
So it's almost like a, despite what you've got, we are stronger than you. We have got more resilience than you. And that weapon almost symbolizes that resilience.
Long ago, and today as well, mainly stones are used as ammunition, available anywhere. But not every stone is suitable.
But they have to be a uniform shape. It's no good me picking up these stones.
No, nothing.
Because they will throw all over the place.
All over the place, they will not go in a straight line. Maybe you can lose it when you go spinning.
So you have to either find stones that are a nice, even shape,
yep,
or you have to...
Make them.
Make them.
This kind of prepared stone projectile weighs about 200 grams. What kind of impact does it have? 15 meters away, a wooden and tin target is set up for a test. The sling's characteristic whip crack noise is heard every time that the back part of the sling breaks the sound barrier during the shot. The sound wave of the sling band gets faster and faster as it continues to the slack end, where it reaches twice the speed of sound.
You've just eaten that shield. Stone after stone, just eating away. And you were doing it over and over again. It's a very rhythmic action.
Yeah, if you have the point, you have to keep shooting at the same time.
Look at the impact on the metal. I mean, it's a terrifying weapon. Terrifying weapon. I mean, those stones, I mean, that's going to kill you. That speed that you're throwing with that whip crack force, whether you're wearing armor or not, that's if it hits you in the head, it's certainly going to kill you.
Yeah, obviously.
How fast does the stone projectile travel when it's shot by our champion Luis? We test the speed with a high-precision digital meter. But in order for a measurement to be made, Luis needs to shoot directly through the opening. Success, but what speed did the stone reach?
52 meters per second. So that's 186, 187 kilometers per hour. Pretty fast.
A sling can accomplish top speeds, but precise aim is difficult, especially in combat.
Ancient slings weren't precision instruments, partly because of the material they were made from. The smallest change of angle would cause an extreme change to your trajectory.
A delay of just 0.2 of a second before release can result in a deviation of 30 degrees in the projectile's trajectory. To increase their hit rate, ancient warriors choose projectiles that are as uniform as possible. These kind of standardized lead projectiles were produced more than 2,000 years ago.
So we've got two very different missiles here. We've got, the heavy rock and the Roman glandis, which is Latin for acorn, and you can see that's an acorn shape.
Lead projectiles, known as glanders by the Romans, can be produced at any campfire, since lead melts at a temperature of 328 degrees centigrade. The lead projectiles often also contain a message as a kind of sarcastic note to the enemy. On this one it says in Greek letters, "Take that." The tradition of writing on projectiles continues to this day. During World War II, Allied aircraft crews decorate their bombs with greetings to the Germans. In two wars against Iraq, Americans addressed their bombs to Saddam Hussein.
Them taking some small psychological step to give them a message. They're probably not going to necessarily see that message, but it gives that person a sense of being able to demonstrate the anger they feel inside, the emotion that they've got inside, what they want to say to that person. So by putting it on the weapon, it almost makes them feel a little bit of satisfaction.
In war, it can also help to personalize your weapon by giving it a name.
Deshalb hat man immer wieder der Waffe ein...
That's why people used to name their weapons and sent some sort of greeting along with them. Swords are supposed to be magical. And when they named their swords Iron Eater or Long and Sharp, I suppose the name alone meant to say it all.
Sicherlich auch Programm gewesen.
In the ancient world and during the Middle Ages, swords take on mythical qualities. In modern times, soldiers often feel that they have a special relationship with their firearms, which they show by taking extra care of them. Behind this desire, there is a need to preserve something personal in the midst of what can often seem to be an inhuman war. A miracle weapon may also be called upon for extra help when it comes to matters of life or death. Our next experiment tests the effect of a sling on a hypothetical enemy. World champion Lewis slings stones at a realistic leather skin dummy block. Our camera records the moment of impact.
Look at that, and we could see how hard it hit by how far it has bounced back. Here it is. I mean, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 6 meters from where it hit. So that was a tremendous impact, and you hit him right over the heart. That would have smashed his ribs and stopped his heart.
Yep.
Next up, we try the lead-cast glanders. How well can the smaller sharp-edged projectiles penetrate the dummy?
Look at this, Lewis. That is chilling. It's actually in there. You actually got it inside the man. This has gone through and embedded deep inside. That is a weapon.
Slingers appear again and again in world history. In this 14th century depiction from the Middle Ages, they are shown next to archers. During their conquest of the Incan Empire, Spain is confronted with warriors bearing slings. The sling is finally replaced almost everywhere with the emergence of firearms. Starting in the 16th century, they completely changed the nature of warfare. Small handguns are used in combat, in addition to muskets and later rifles. The revolver is legendary, not only because of its speed. Its myth is closely tied to a romanticized ideal of the Wild West. Cowboys, outlaws, and sheriffs. They all have the revolver in their holsters, and whoever draws faster wins. But fewer know that the revolver also influenced military conflicts, such as the American Civil War. Since one of its design details gives it the advantage in speed.
The history of war is a constant search for an advantage. Having weapons that are faster than the enemy's weapons is a great advantage. If you can shoot faster, you can kill him quicker than he can kill you.
Dreams of a pistol that can fire more than one shot in a row have been around for quite some time. But designs are either too expensive or, like these pepperbox models, too heavy. Until a young American enters the ring with big ideas and no shortage of entrepreneurial spirit.
Samuel Colt is a classic American entrepreneur. He's a showman. He delights in public display, in doing something exceptional. He first came to public attention by blowing up a ship. Everybody got very wet and nobody bought the torpedo.
Supposedly, Colt comes up with the idea for the revolver's mechanism while on a ship. Legend has it that at an age of just 16, depending on the version of the tale, he notices either the helm or a specific maneuver. When the anchor is hoisted, a winch clamps after each rotation. This basic principle is later the inspiration for the revolver magazine.
He then comes up with the idea of the revolving six-chambered pistol, which becomes his trademark.
The first revolver that Colt sells to the Army on a large scale is the Colt Walker, produced in 1847 for the Mexican-American War. John Rivera is a former policeman and professional weapons expert who has won several rapid-fire competitions. At a shooting range with John, we want to discover the secret of the Colt. The Colt Walker, weight just under 2 kilos, caliber .44, meaning roughly an 11mm diameter.
Samuel Colt is the godfather of firearms.
From 1861 to 1865, in the American Civil War, the states of the Union battle against the Confederates of the South. The North wants to abolish slavery, and the South wants to keep things the way they are. More than 3 million soldiers fight their own countrymen. Ultimately, an estimated 750,000 of them are killed. The high death toll is a consequence of the use of modern weapons. Colt sells close to 400,000 revolvers to the Union alone. And many of the firearms he sells are Colt Walkers. How fast could Civil War soldiers shoot with it?
In the olden days, what they would do is they would have a deer horn or something similar to this, and they'd put their finger over the top, and they would turn it upside down. They'd get measuring, and they would pour directly into the cylinder and drop in a 44 grain round projectile in it.
The Colt Walker, though, still needs to be loaded from the front.
I'm going to center on the ball, and I'm going to push it down and seat it. It came to complete rest, and now I know that it's actually seated in the bottom of the cylinder. So imagine the difficulty if you're riding or in combat and somebody's shooting at you right now as you're trying to manipulate and load your gun.
We want to test how quickly 6 shots can be fired with the Colt Walker.
This is considered cavalry style with the butts forward, because if you're riding a horse and you need to get out your firearm, it's easier to cross-draw and come up to your target than it is because the barrel is so long, coming all the way up your side and coming onto target. It's pull out across the body, up, hammer back, acquire the target, fire. See the caps falling out? Acquire target.
After every shot, John Rivera needs to raise the weapon up to a vertical position so that the detonators fall out. With this early version, known as a single-action revolver, the shooter has to manually cock the gun every time. This rotates the barrel and locks it into correct position for the next shot. The complex mechanism is prone to errors.
We had a misfire on this one, so I only got 4 shots off on target. And this one is a prime example of what happens if you don't raise the gun and clear it. What happened is it's fragmented, and if I continue and if I didn't raise it up and shake it, watch, it'll jam down below, and now my gun is no longer good.
John Rivera needs a total of 15 seconds to fire 4 shots. The reloading process would cost him over another minute. Nevertheless, the weapon still provides an advantage for soldiers in combat.
It is ridiculously heavy, and if you're holding it out, you're going to be shaking, and if you're riding a horse, it's going to be hard to acquire a target and stay on it. It was state-of-the-art at the time. I mean, I'll gladly take 6 shots, 5 shots, 4 shots over someone who only has 1 any day of the week.
The revolver is known as a side weapon by the military, a last resort for cases of close combat. It can be easily beat by a rifle in terms of range and precision, but it still was fired countless times on Civil War battlefields.
So Samuel Colt sold the firearm to both the Confederate and to the Union. And although it was the same weapon, it was used differently. The Confederate, smaller, not quite as funded, were guerrilla warfare. So what they would do is they would sneak in through the trees, through the bushes, and it was easy to carry a pistol, whereas a long rifle would get caught on shrubs as you went through, or trees. Whereas the Union, this was a cavalry gun. They would carry it cross-draw, quick, agile. They could get up on to the Confederate quickly and come up on the target and shoot.
Samuel Colt continues to develop his weapon and puts a popular idea of the era into practice: mass production using standardized, interchangeable parts.
Auf der Weltausstellung in London 1851.
At the 1851 World's Fair in London, Samuel Colt takes 10 of his guns apart and mixes them up on a table. He then puts them back together and proves that every weapon is operational. They all work and can shoot. This demonstrated the extent that their production had already been standardized, so that the parts were all individually interchangeable. And at the time, that was a new thing for weapons systems.
With his revolver models, Colt continues to build upon his legend. The 1851 Navy is his most successful model, selling 250,000 units. Many consider his 1860 Army model to be the best of the early revolvers. And finally, his single-action Army 1873 is the first revolver that can be loaded with copper cartridges, allowing for even more speed.
By introducing the cartridge, you could carry multiple rounds in your pocket. You can carry them on your belt. You see the old cowboy movies with the loops in the back. You could load and come up on your target faster, and in doing so, get off your shots, versus the old one. Remember we had to do the cap and ball and make sure the cap would fall out? And if you became proficient with your firearm, you can actually come up and with your opposite hand, get off 6 shots.
The ultimate legend of the Wild West. An outlaw and a sheriff face off in a duel. They both pull quickly to shoot from the hip. Realistic or just a Hollywood fantasy? Sports gunman John Rivera demonstrates this kind of targeted hip shot. It takes a lot of training to be actually able to aim.
So if you notice, I never brought the gun up higher than my hip, okay? So motion is time. If I'm taking the gun and coming all the way up and coming on target versus a gunfighter who practices enough and can hit from this, it's not a fair fight.
How fast can he shoot with a revolver? John Rivera uses a modern weapon optimized for competition.
Here we go.
We time him for 6 shots. A slow motion replay shows that with a fluid movement of both hands, John can fire shot after shot in seconds.
That's how it's done. So basically all those shots were right about within just over a second and a half. I would say that's pretty fast. I would hate to be downrange.
In direct comparison to the Colt Walker, in the time it takes John to fire just one shot with a Colt Walker, he can manage 6 with a newer Colt model. In the United States, speed and trick shooting has turned into a competitive sport. The main event is fast draw, judging who pulls their gun the quickest to fire one or more shots. And it's entertaining for the fans as well. The revolver's legendary status began in the middle of the 19th century with Samuel Colt's early models.
What we've got with Samuel Colt is somebody who sees an opportunity to create something more than a product. He's creating, well, I don't think a revolver is a lifestyle, but it's certainly, it's that kind of designer-branded good.
But an obsession with these kinds of firearms also kills around 15,000 people per year in the United States. From a numerical standpoint, there is almost one gun for each of the country's inhabitants, the highest density in the world. And the National Rifle Association, NRA for short, is also to thank.
In today's controversial discussions about the NRA, it's important not to forget that the organization was originally founded in 1871 to teach civilians about the safe use of firearms.
Since the 1970s, the NRA has played a major role in US politics. Their most important priority, preventing stricter laws on firearms, even if bloody tragedies have become a part of everyday life.
What we're looking at is a country where the gun is part of culture and identity in a way that it isn't in older countries. And the National Rifle Association has demonstrated that there is an enormous political support for retaining the right to keep and bear whatever weapons you like to have. These can be military-grade assault rifles, hunting rifles, all kinds of weapons. The Americans are essentially in love with weapons.
Mass shooting in schools steadily start new debates about stricter laws on firearms. Some states have changed their laws, but the number of acts of violence has not decreased. Samuel Colt's invention of the revolver also contributes to the United States' current issues with gun control. By the 20th century, the military replaces the revolver with semi-automatic self-loading pistols. Today, it is primarily popular with collectors and marksmen. Speed is still a decisive factor for armies. How fast will weapons of the future be? Have we already reached the limits of what is possible? A US Navy design could open up a new chapter in the race for high-speed weapons. A laser gun that can destroy a target precisely within milliseconds. Initial tests done by Navy ships in the Arabian Gulf have been successful. An invisible laser beam that comes out of nowhere and hits at the speed of light. Is this the future of war?